You are listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. Thank you for downloading and subscribing. Coming to you virtually live from high atop the historic Raleigh building in beautiful downtown Raleigh. The NCF&B takes the listener behind the scenes to tell the stories of the people that contribute to the creation of the food and beverage community of North Carolina. And now, fighting over the check. Yeah, right. It's Max Trujillo and Matthew Weiss.
Hello, and thank you for listening and watching to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. I am your co-host, Max Trujillo.
And I am your co-host, Felicia Trujillo, for today. I look just like Matt Weiss.
Our temporary co-host, while Matt is in Italy, going all over the world, having the greatest time ever. It's fine. We're doing pretty well, too, because we are in Highlands, North Carolina, with a, he's going to hate it when I say it this way, with Birthday Boy on...
Yes,
on the microphones. Amazing winemaker from Sonoma, rests his head half-time here in Highlands, North Carolina, and he is Guy Davis of Davis Family Vineyards. And along with him is his son, who is the assistant winemaker for Davis Family Vineyards, is Cooper Davis. Hello and welcome. How are we all doing?
Thank you so well. What a great intro. Thank you so much.
Oh, man, this is amazing. We met in Beaufort just a few weeks ago at the Beaufort Food and Wine Festival, and first off, that was a pretty awesome event that we had.
Beyond pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Very awesome.
Yeah, it's one of the best.
It was so, beautiful.
Yeah, if you're into, like, food and beverage and that's your jam, like, you're going to have a great time. It's amazing. But there we were talking, and of course, you were actually the first person we met because we were just pulling into the car, putting the truck into to move into the apartment for the weekend. And our friend Clark, amazing artist, was out there, and he knows me, and he's like, "That's Max. Oh, Max, meet Guy." Blah blah blah. We start talking, and before long, we became fast friends over the weekend. Cut to finding out that you have not only a winery out in Sonoma, but then you spend half your life here in North Carolina, which makes it so relevant to talk on the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast.
Yes, that was the fun part of our meeting.
Yeah.
How many, and we have layers. We don't have enough time on this interview to even talk about how many connections between your California connections and all of it. But yeah, yes, I'm rooted here now 50% of the time.
So let's start there first, just simply, and we'll get into your career and the winery and what came after all. This guy over here.
Sure.
But why North Carolina? How did that get you here? What got you here?
I fell in love with the area once I put my feet on the ground here, but our distributor discovered me, Tryon Distributing.
Yep, of course.
Amazing partner and a group of people from the top down. They found me, we made a connection, and I didn't even have enough wine to give them to be an active partner here. I was just, in our bootstraps fashion. I was just growing a little bit at a time.
Yeah.
So to add another state, we couldn't even do. We were at 1,500 cases maybe at the time. So that was 2003. And then in 2004, we chatted, and I still really didn't have the wine. I was trying to grow a direct-to-consumer business at the same time, and for margins and for growth. And I had Passport Wine Clubs to work that we were helping out with. Yeah. So anyway, then in 2005, I had a little bit of wine, and I just offered them a couple hundred cases.
Sure.
And which we all know is hard to train a whole staff statewide to have wine that by the time
it's like on a sales quota for your sales team for a quarter or a weekend sometimes. Right. We spent all this time learning about something that was going to sell itself. Cool. Thanks.
Yes. Thanks, but no thanks as a commission salesperson.
But North Carolina was the first state that you started selling wine outside of California?
No.
Oh, yeah.
It was... we started up with a little distributor in Illinois, Cream Wine Company, but we really were mostly direct to consumer.
Yeah.
And so when we started the conversation, it's like, well, let's put the amount of wine you have in the West, Asheville, the mountains.
Sure.
And And, they said to me, if we do a good job, then we can get a little more wine allocated and we'll go west to east. And that's really ideal for them to want to work with me, being the size, and to cut that out and segment the market was, flattering and also fantastic. So
we
did that. And I was picked up at the airport in Asheville by a gentleman named Jeb Boyd, who covered the mountains, lived in Asheville, and we drove up the mountain. We called on Highlands Country Club. We showed Chardonnay and Pinot. They bought them both. And Greg Crawford, who was the GM there, is a cyclist. I saw.
You were on a work with this local sales rep.
And we're driving up from Asheville. And and it was so beautiful. And the vibe here was just amazing. It was springtime. And then I connect right away. First buyer buys both wines we're showing, and then he's got bicycling things in the office. I connect with that. He tells me about Glen Falls hike right around the corner from them. I do that in the morning before we start dragging the bag and making sales calls. And that was 18 years ago, and I've loved coming to work here. The people within Tryon, the people in the community, in every one of the communities across the state has been just as welcoming, just as warm. The setting's been just as stunning as the first day I came up.
And they wanted to bring your wines to the western part of North Carolina, mostly because of the Edwards and the different...
The fancy place?
Yeah, the different country clubs and such out here.
It worked out that way for me beneficially like crazy. I think their intent was bringing on a small, true artisan producer who farmed organically, who really fit the profile of what they were looking for.
Yeah.
And then I just happened to connect with this area so well. And so all those things like the country clubs up here and some of this resort behavior connected really closely with our brand. So I would come in a few days early to work the market and recreate.
Stay
a few days.
It's really
been pretty
cool here. Yeah.
Next thing you know, we'd moved west to east, and then I'm part of the Frankie Lemon School,
of course,
Triangle Wine Experience charity there, and the friendships I've made through that.
It's great. So with that, there's this huge correlation between California winemakers, primarily in the Sonoma Napa region, with both the Triangle Wine Experience with Frankie Lemon, but also just in North Carolina in general. I did read a study, I wouldn't get into this later or not, that wine consumption is slowly going down right now because all consumption is going up, but it's becoming varied. But inside of that, North Carolina has the biggest growth ratio of wine drinkers than any other state in the union. So maybe you had something to do with that in your own little way, but also...
I didn't have knowledge of that, but maybe doing it is very believable.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, from the outside looking in and trying to take that analysis, I don't know what you think, but I look at it like, it's because all the fancy tech people from like California and New York are like, we're going to move here because there's all the technology moving to North Carolina, and we also love wine. So they just brought their palettes with them with their jobs, right? Like,
I think so.
Yeah, I think that
I couldn't believe that.
The elements of community and storytelling here, so maker driven, more so than anywhere else in the country. We do, not a ton of market work in all 50 states, but the ones that we're in, we don't see the same appreciation for small makers here, even in Highlands, all the way to the coast out in Beaufort. People that give their time to a craft have time on people's dinner tables all over the state. It's really, really special here. So I think it attributes to so much more than that tech too, because the people here just, y'all eat and drink like crows. And, it's all about bringing people together. And, with that as a core element, we're able to, bring so many cool stories from each one of these vineyards to our family, to the chefs that we're working with, so well that, when it comes to bringing people together, that's the most important part.
So we'll get into our dining experience that we just had. That's just to like tease everybody. We had arguably the most unique dining experience that we've had in a very long time, and that means something because we dine all the time and at great places. it kind of just blew our minds, and you're responsible for it. So we'll get there. So stay tuned, everybody, because we have to tell you about one of the craziest dining experiences we've had, but we'll get into that at the end. Cooper, if you'll take us to the story of the winery, even though you were just a little tyke at the time, or maybe even not even existing.
No, I was there. I remember very early on seeing the house, and my dad started his wine career in imports, so was very well timed with genesis of the internet. He took that as capital for our winery. His partner for the import went and started Vine Connections, which is far and wide the best importer.
Great importer.
Most of South America and the Japanese sake portfolio in the States. And my dad forgot everything he learned about in economics, and he went and bought an abandoned Zinfandel vineyard that was a foreclosure property. And we roll up to that property, and it was 25 feet overgrown with oak brush and blackberries and everything you look at and say, oh crap, where's the tractor at? And it was a house. I just remember walls missing. It was the worst of the worst, and all it took was a whole lot of time and love. Every year we kind of just knocked one project off, and it was crazy. You kind of with that much overgrowth, you basically just cut it and create this giant tumbleweed. That you just don't get in front of that big boy. But
is that how you do the farming, or that's how you get rid of the dead leaves?
Exactly. All the overgrowth. The thing was, usually with that much overgrowth, you just tractor it. We got in there and we found these old vines. We didn't know a thing about them, but through research, we found out they'd been planted in 1896. Yeah. So our number one mission was save as many of these as we could. So we got 3 acres of those still left. They're 127 years old this year. So true old vine. The rest is planted to Pinot, Syrah, and Chard. But that little old property was long forgotten. And in our neck of the woods, much like here in Highlands, it's so biodiverse. If you leave anything for 25 years, Mother Nature, she takes it right on back. Yeah. And you got to wrestle with her.
I'm really curious because for the listeners, if they don't understand this yet, let me just say it in real simple terms. Guy created the winery by himself. Like he didn't get this from generations beyond or whatever. Like many wineries, we're going old school in France. It's I'm the 9th generation of whatever. You're the first generation of your winery and such, and you are the 2nd generation, and you have only grown up and lived your whole life essentially has been wine related. And I've noticed that you are a student of the industry. So I would love to know a little bit about even that, growing up on the vineyard with this guy who's making pretty good wine. When did you jump in?
Wine? Was he blindfolding you and making you taste?
No,
the god of wine. Yeah. Please tell me you've seen that.
Drops of wine.
Drops of wine.
It's you can do anything you want, and then you realize 10 years later you've gotten this amazing subliminal food and wine education. I started suckering in our vineyards, which if you've ever grown roses or any other bush flower or anything, they shoot out these branches at the bottom of the vine, and you got to bend over and snap every one off. And our vineyard isn't acres to me. It's 7,716 vines, which with 3 plants we're a little farther than. But, for my own personal, I have to say it's a good number. But then I signed my first W-2 to work in restaurants when I was 12. I worked in food and wine, extensively. I have, a couple thousand unclocked hours just, going in for bakery shift before high school, working until it started, and then I'd come back at 3 o'clock and I'd go pull herbs for pantry until 5:30 when service started, and I'd get my butt out of there. I wouldn't ask for anything. I was just happy to be in there with a bunch of rowdy gentlemen in the kitchen. It was really fun culture for me. And then when it comes time to make a decision, what do you want to do at post high school? It was pretty obvious. I was privy to an amazing lifestyle, and for my generation, participation is the best ticket, so that's what we did. We just dove right in. That was 12 years ago. So I've had 12 full-time harvests now. So yeah, it's been just a little over 10 years with the family, which,
Guy, how old was Cooper when he first told you he wanted to be the winemaker?
It was probably 2.5. That's what I mean.
That's what I was thinking.
No, he still never said that because it's one of those evolutionary things.
Yeah. But does it feel innate?
School, there is a moment where, because Cooper's a brilliant young man. And so at the decision to decide what college and in what fields, because people would ask him all along. He was 2.5 when we bought the property, start the replan, recovery. I still had Passport Wine Club. Things were, he was immersed. I mean, he was immersed. But at 17, 18, when he's picking colleges, and I mean, he could have been an engineer. He could have been many things. And so he won the spelling bee championship multiple years. He could have been a writer. He could have been anything.
What was the word? What was the word?
Plenitude, man.
Planitude?
Plenitude, yeah.
Yeah, we say that all the time. It's a good word today.
My last spelling bee word was spaghetti. It was first grade.
I was going to say, yeah, freshman year at college at Pepperdine, everybody. No, just,
I was doing the master's program.
Yeah.
But when given that option, it is free will, though, to be honest. And he could have been anything, and he still can be, but is actually becoming one of the sharpest young winemakers in Sonoma County.
That's got to feel...
Yeah, at 18, we have
prideful.
a family meeting. He calls a family meeting, and... we've been looking at NYU and all the, his schools, his choices. One of them was Warren Wilson here in Asheville, even, because he was a Waldorf school. Yeah, the Waldorf school in Sonoma County is a working biodynamic.
Yeah. That's
so he was rooted in a thing. So he had an overlap so much about what we were doing and what he was doing.
Yeah.
And anyway, he holds the family meeting and he announces that he really wants to be in this industry, and he wants to go to Sonoma State in the business and marketing side of this, because he'd been in the field as the business and marketing side, and he'd been in vineyard and winery, and he knew he could pull from that always. And then to add it all made so much sense. But the meeting was about, I'm not going to live at home. I'm going to have college experience. And it was so perfect, because it just. And then this relationship has begun between Cooper and I. And like I said, with the Waldorf School and all the other things we've had connected, and there's been intelligence around the farming that we do.
Yeah.
We've farmed organically since the minute we took over that property 25 feet deep in poison oak and all the things, because we were claiming it back only in the way that I'd already worked a couple of harvesting burgundy.
Yeah.
And in California, and everyone I worked for, thank goodness, they were all thoughtful stewards of the land, and there's only one way. And I was a believer that the soil was the first living thing, and that balanced, well-farmed vines, balanced, well-made wines, and just all of that was already part of my DNA. So that's the way we did it. But Cooper already had actually education in that the Waldorf system to relate and add biodynamic preps and things to our system. So,
as well as assuming some of the business side of it too, like
100%,
all of this, like
marketing side.
Right. So let's talk about business side of this too, because I find this to be interesting. I know you find this to be interesting in that you're a winery in Sonoma. By the way, what sub spot are you in?
Well,
Sonoma?
we've been in Healdsburg for 20 years.
Okay.
Healdsburg's the northernmost end of Russian River Valley.
Yes,
so
but
kind of
it's
where the Russian River is at its northernmost piece. But Russian River Valley within Sonoma County, and so
for that wine region, wouldn't you call it kind of the capital of the Sonoma County for wine?
It's a genesis of where Dry Creek Valley takes off to the north, Alexander Valley takes off northeast, Russian River Valley takes off south and follows.
You're the hub.
So you're connected to many subregions within Sonoma County.
But now we're
so it's the most diverse.
Santa Rosa.
But after 20 years, this jumps ahead to this story, but there were 400 tasting rooms within 45-minute drive of where we are. And after the fires in 17 and 19, 20, and then COVID.
That's an interesting take. I didn't think about it.
We already had discussions about what a beautiful area this was for our family to have, just to enjoy. But then from a business standpoint, and so having this moving forward was also connected to the piece of expanding the winery back.
Yeah.
Because
and I don't think I did a good job of explaining that for everyone, just so you're not lost if you're listening, that there is, of course, a winery in Sonoma, but this tasting room, which is where we're sitting right now in this beautiful area of Highlands, opened just last July, you said. It is this beautiful building, which is behind them. If you look right behind Cooper's shoulder, it's this 2-story building, but it's this beautiful. I will show you some video of it as well as I'm speaking, probably right now. You'll see what it looks like on the inside. It is tremendous. It's new. It's fancy. It's fresh. And it's right next to an amazing smokehouse, like barbecue joint that's like more elevated, kind of cool barbecue. What is it? Highlands Smokehouse, right?
Yes.
You have a fresh produce stand right across the street, and it's not watermelons and peanuts. It's like a full blown. It's like if you just took the side of a Whole Foods off and just said, "Here you go."
Yes.
Like it's a
Right
full blown produce section.
Potted plants.
Yeah,
But it's kind of like the produce stands in California.
It's very similar, and that's a whole other discussion about these similarities that we can draw
So
between
many
sea level
similarities.
in Sonoma County at the Sonoma coast and 4,000 plus feet elevation here.
What I'm hearing, though, what you mentioned about the expansion of doing the winery here or the wine tasting room here, which is like consistency. California had a lot of issues. You had a lot of the fires and all this challenges. Like, I mean, economically, we all know we lived there, we grew up there. So to balance your life a little bit and probably even like your own soul, I would say, you opted to open your tasting room in Highlands, North Carolina, across the country. And I find that to be both ingenious, but also super necessary for this area. And you did something that like, we already know, and everyone knows you in this town. Like we've done a few things and we're like, yeah, we know God. Like, oh yeah. Like you're a local celebrity and you're somewhat kind of new, I guess, in town in a sense. But what a great like marketing plan for our strategy for that, right? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea, and I'm kind of surprised more wineries or people haven't done it. But we had this conversation earlier, the through line between North Carolina and California, there is so many similarities, like the proximity of the ocean to the mountains and the city of oaks. And there's just, I think, the vibe, the energy, the love for artisan products and the respect for agriculture, markets that are roadside produce stands. Like there's just, there's all these things that I think we felt when we moved here, because when we left LA, we wanted a significant difference, but we also didn't want to feel out of place. And we not only never felt out of place, we felt like, oh, this is home. Like, North Carolina is our home. California is our roots and always will be. And sometimes we have a longing for certain things like the winery or the food or, driving up the coast.
Well, I've said before, like Raleigh, I don't know if you spend any time really in Raleigh, but Raleigh, where we live, is kind of like a young San Jose because it's also right next door to RTP, which is like San Jose being right next door to the Silicon Valley.
Right now.
And it's growing exponentially, also like they both have a hockey team that's quite successful. It's like they're kind of defined by just a few things, but those things are very similar to each other. And then you look at Asheville and its neighboring areas, which is kind of where we're at here. It's kind of, I would almost venture to say it's kind of like a Lake Tahoe to wine country. Like if Asheville was the Lake Tahoe, cool, mountainous, recreational, you got all these fun things you can do, ski, whatever. But then you go off and now you're in this beautiful wine country. And that's kind of what you got here in the Highlands, even though this isn't, I've asked you, would you ever make wine here in North Carolina? We could pause right here and edit your answer, or you could be honest and tell me, what is your opinion of making wine in North Carolina?
We owe the people of North Carolina the best wines that we can make, and Mother Nature's the boss on that one. So she tells us that we got to be in California and then come out and open them here. It's only as good as the company you keep. So, where we choose to enjoy them is definitely part of where they belong, right? So.
But you broke the concept of, a lot of breweries do this. They get like, not that you guys get inexpensive square footage in Sonoma. We all know what that's like. But a lot of breweries will say, let's put the 50,000 square foot brewery in the middle of nowhere. For cheap, and then we'll put our tap room in Durham or in Raleigh or in LA or in wherever. So you're taking that mentality of like, wine, you still need a sense of place. And so you can't just make your wine anywhere. You have to make it where the wine is best made. But that doesn't mean that's where the wine needs to be consumed, I guess is your point. And so you could do that anywhere. So why not? And all you got to do, I guess, is just constantly be shipping wine across the state. That's got to be a massive task, right?
Lends itself back to this great relationship with Tryon, dating back to when we finally
Oh, yeah. Because they're importing. You essentially get your wine from them, I would assume, at this point.
We do.
Right, because of the legalities and all that. You would have to.
Tryon says we're Boy Scouts. They do everything by the book.
Yeah.
And so they purchase our wine at FOB as though they were selling it to any other retailer, restaurant. And then we, as a retailer here, wine bar, we purchase it back.
Yeah.
And at wholesale, so
you have to do it, I guess.
At FOB for the, terminology. And we purchase
It's so everyone pays their taxes, everybody. So we can have nice roads and nice
And
things.
even better, it's, they take it, they service us, bringing us deliveries a couple times a week. My sales representative, one of my favorite humans in the world, who helped us build this business in this area, now still gets her piece of this.
Give her a shout. Who is it?
Cara Frasier. She is amazing. She drives for that trail. She's the best. So amazing and wine knowledgeable, and also just amazing human. But it's a great it's all about relationships. This whole life we get is how we build those and grow those and maintain those. And we're fortunate in this state that we have met so many amazing.
Relationships is a perfect segue because, of course, we had this just kind of kismet weekend that happened we have two daughters. One's friend's parents invited one daughter to go on a Memorial Day weekend vacation to Beaufort. And the other one said, how about Grandfather Mountain? And we're like, cool. And so we looked at each other and we're like, so we're going to have like an empty nest for the weekend? And just then you emailed me and said, hey, you guys should come out for Memorial Day weekend. And then we looked at each other. It was all the same day that we realized we're going to have this empty weekend. We're like, yes. And I highly encourage, this is the Anthony Bourdain way of living, is have that extra glass of wine, talk to the person, get involved, get like you have written inside of your tasting room. You have that quote about him just living life and not saying no and moving forward and just saying yes to the next thing.
Adventures, yeah.
And so that got us here. But then even inside of that, we're sitting on your porch having a beautiful bottle of your Rhone blend. Tell me the name. Cuvée Luc. That is your grandson's name. That is your brother. That's your nephew.
It's my nephew.
Yeah, your brother's child. Got it. And then you start talking to the guy. You start talking to us about, we're talking about where should we eat? We're in this beautiful place. And then you say, I've already been twice this week to this one place, and I go pretty often. I'm like, oh, what's that? And you piqued our curiosity. Tell us what you told us when we said, where should we eat? What was your suggestion?
I don't know how I went about it, but Native Prime is this. Yeah. It's really hard. And you've been there now.
On Google, it's Native Prime Provisions, I think, if you want to find it. He's going to be pissed that we're talking about this.
It's hard to articulate.
It's a secret. Don't tell anybody.
It's hard to articulate what that really is. But he is he established the 6-day direct from the fishermen supply to his the supply chain, North Carolina coast, and then beyond now. And with everybody from Snake River Farms, Wagyu in Idaho to local Brasstown beef, and just
which we recently had on the show.
Amazing sourcing. But he put in 9 seats on the edge of this big kitchen in Cashers, right, neighboring village, and once he had his provisions and his sourcing set, he said, okay, now I'll cook. And now they are the best 9 seats in 3 or 4 counties. You experienced it today.
So where you got to tell us, where is it? Not only it's in Cashers, which people we're in Highlands. Cashers is kind of just adjacent local towns to, I guess, Asheville proper, but it's about an hour away. It's hour and a half. I mean, it's still pretty far away.
Hour and a half from Nashville.
Close to the Tennessee border, the Blue Ridge Mountains.
Yeah.
That's where we're at.
Four corners, north, south, Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia.
So most of everything here is phenomenal and gorgeous and like bespoke. Every building's kind of its own thing because there's some money that's been injected into this community. There's also a very popular local chain called Ingles, which looks like to a Hispanic person, Ingles, which we all say. Yes, Ingles, it's English in Spanish, which I laugh because like I worked for Wolfgang Puck and he had a restaurant called Chinois, which just means Chinese in French.
Right.
So I'm like, oh, kind of the same thing. It's English and Spanish, but that's your local grocery store, and there's a bunch of them everywhere. But this place is just like where a shoe store would possibly be, or a vape shop, in fact, I think there's a vape shop and a shoe store right in between.
It was like carpets or carpet cleaning or something. Yeah.
And Sherwin-Williams flooring.
Yeah. And so then it
very
takes
glamorous.
this one spot. So that's the way it is in North Carolina, by the way. Like I worked at Midtown Grill, and it's like it was a really nice restaurant, but it was next to a Starbucks in a mini mall.
In a hot dog shop.
In a hot dog shop right next door. But like you walk in and it's, they have a legit wine program and the chef is back there throwing down with crazy sourcing. Yes, this is not to the nth level I've ever seen. And it reminds me of, I mentioned for those that have watched Hero Dreams of Sushi. It's an Academy Award-winning documentary. It came out in 2011. It's about this elderly man that has generations underneath him, but he's a master sushi chef living in Tokyo, having a place where there's only like 7 or 8 seats at the bar. And he essentially just makes the best sushi you'll ever have. And it's all hand-rolled. He's doing it a certain way. He teaches his children and their children, and it becomes a whole thing. But there's a line out the door. He ends up getting like a 3 Michelin star. He's one of the greatest chefs you'll consider of our time. I don't even know if he's still with us. I mean, to be honest, like if you are, I don't know. But anyhow, it's not dissimilar to that, but we're in North Carolina, and this guy's not from Japan, and this guy is just some dude with a ball cap on sideways, and it is super edge to him the whole way. So please explain to us, like, how would one get a seat at this place, and what would you need to do to do that?
Great question.
Not if you're Guy Davis, who sells wine there, but if you're like a schmuck like me, how do I get there?
Yeah, I'm fortunate. He's become a really close friend of mine, but just follow the rules. There are 9 seats, no reservations. Be polite, show up on time, not too early, but don't come in late, expect special treatment either. And we check in with Tanya, she's amazing wife, and
that's his wife.
Yeah,
I didn't realize that.
Wife, yes.
Okay.
And they're such an awesome couple. But he is all about the quality of his food. Yeah, he takes so seriously about the quality of his sourcing, and so I mean, we saw it today. We had everything from nigiri to number 5 Denver cut to a steam pot of clams and mussels and a tempura lobster.
Spiny lobster. I mean, you'll see. I got to put all these like little clips. We took some great video while we were there, but it also is set up very different. This room. I mean, it is a market where you can buy your wine, and other great wines in the area, and like all this Kermit Lynch like program and all. It's like really good stuff.
Greatness.
And then you can buy fish and meats. So it is like a butcher when you first walk in, although very small. It's like one small little thing, but I'm sure they have everything in the back, and like they just tell you this is what you should get because it's all sushi grade, like high end. And then a couple other snacky things that are really cool and fun stuff that like only a foodie would care about, but it's all there. But then, it's these 9 seats, and he's playing, like, I made the joke, I go, you're playing my playlist, and then the guy even next to me is like, are they really playing your playlist? And then Tanya was like, oh yeah, we did research on you, Max, and then we learned what you liked, and I was laughing, but I'm like,
I wouldn't be surprised because
he followed me on Instagram before we went in, so he knew who I was.
He knew, and what I'll say is, when she unlocked the front door, she knew exactly which car pulled up first, which person walked up second. She was like, you're first, you're 2 and 3, you're 4 and 5.
I heard, so we didn't even get into this, but like because there's only 9 seats, we got there first. You told us to get there early. We're waiting. The place opened at noon, and there was already. We actually got there when there was only one guy.
Yeah.
But we also got you a birthday card at Ingles. Happy birthday. So in our time of buying the birthday card and coming back, 2 couples were in our way.
My anxiety spiked. I was like, oh my God, I don't know what this means. I think we're out.
That's 5 people.
Where's Guy?
And we're 6 and 7. And we know that you were 8 and 9, and then another couple shows up. And I go, oh no, we're 10 and 11. Oh my God, what's happening? And we don't know. And you've already told me that for Seinfeld fans, it's kind of soup Nazi-esque. Like, don't.
In the sweetest way.
Don't look anyone in the eye. Do as you're told.
Follow the rules.
Don't break any rules here. And so I'm super nervous.
Here. Keep that in mind.
I'm texting you. I'm like, I'm so sorry. They called us in. There's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can do. It's like, I couldn't. Anyhow, because they're so gracious and awesome, there was 1 seat left up. There was 9. There was 10 seats. You guys walked in, and you did look like really sad dogs that had been left at the pound on the last day before. And then they're like, oh, we could just move this couple around so they can kind of shoehorn in the corner like we are here on this table. And we put one more chair there, no problem. And so all of our anxiety left. We now sit down. The guy knows you. He pops a bottle of your sparkling rosé in honor of your birthday and shares it with the entire place. And then we were proceeded to, like, we let you drive the night because you've been there before. And then you just proceeded to order. And to say it's a sushi bar is kind of limiting, but I mean, in the same, it's almost like a ishikaya or an izakaya, where it's kind of like a chef tapas, he makes things for you.
Omakase.
Well, ishikaya is like with a grill and all that, and then omakase is when they just do whatever they want, and so in a way it's that, but there was a menu, there was some order to it, but the sourcing was crazy. The wasabi, could you tell me what's going on there?
So that's really this crazy thing where they've looked at the climate similarities between the Highlands, Sapphire area in these mountains and looked at some of the best places to grow wasabi in Japan, and they've noticed some similarities, and then they've gone in and planted it. And so it is true climate, much like any great agriculture, they've just listened to Mother Nature and put something that belonged where it belonged. And oh my gosh, to see him, pull out that shark skin grater and to do it traditionally, the whole room, I mean, you guys were there too. It's so floral, it's so pretty, and it's just different when it hasn't been on 5 legs of transportation through, the supply chain of food that we all know so well.
Yeah.
And when it's, Scott, that crazy guy with that ball cap. I think the ball cap probably stays on when he does the pulling. You need something to stash all that wasabi, right? So he's out there in the ravines. It's hilarious and
but that
delicious.
Speaks to how North Carolina is so unique with its agriculture, because the world's best miso is actually made here in North Carolina, not Japan, because. And I'm doing the story a disservice, but a Japanese immigrant came here, and the ingredients that he sourced was more true to the original flavor profile of miso than it is now in this day and age in Japan.
Well, soy is like a major crop.
Yeah.
Is a major crop that North Carolina does exceedingly well.
But the artistry
and then he takes
this,
he turns it into miso, which is a whole other process. But like we can do anything we can do anything we want in this state. You hear that?
It's true.
Except for maybe make the wine that you guys want to make.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to talk shit, but I will say on behalf of North Carolina, and this is fine. These are some bougie Californians, and so are these. So we get it. We get it. No, you guys. I mean, come on. You love the space, so it's fine. A little humility in the fact that North Carolina. Let's all be honest. You're usually looking at what France, Italy, Spain, or the left coast of this country is producing on a traditional level. With that said, I have had some amazing wines that are coming out of North Carolina, so I do not want to keep that narrative going. There are some guys that are
tasted them coast to coast, and there are some
they're pushing
nice wines.
And I just think like now, I know it sounds stupid, but I really think because of TikTok and YouTube and Reels, and the education is being passed along so easily. The artistry, like if someone follows the right person. If Cooper, you're just like doing a live video of you doing crush one day or a blend, then some guy in another town that shouldn't be making great wine sees that and goes, "Oh, that's how he's doing it. Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, now I know how to do it." And I think like because of this communication level, we're all just becoming so much better.
Things get better
at every craft that we're
wine
doing.
Was really a about the place it comes from.
Sure.
Cheap. So there's, and I've had some really nice wines from the state.
Yeah.
And we considered it a lot in the beginning, but it just, the way it fit within, I mean, I make this much wine from a dozen unique sites or so, we take 39 pieces and make them into 12 wines. And so to try to fit this in just didn't fit in our portfolio anyway.
What is your total case production, if you don't mind me asking?
6,000 or 7,000 cases.
Oh, that's not much.
But, we do that intentionally. We're not trying to grow. We could scale up and add states and do all these things, but the formula that's worked for us, and it's not a formula, but it's the way we like to do things, is to really make these special small lots. And then direct to consumer lets us make just 200 cases of 128-year-old Zinfandel and get a little out to everybody and know the people who are going to drink it. So that allows us the margin to get to be who we are, is because to make 6,000 or 7,000 cases and try to think you're going to do it at the 3-tier system and make ends meet,
good luck,
and set up your family for the future isn't the right formula. However, and it's also more fun to take it from working in the vineyard and managing the health of the soil to knowing the people who are drinking the wine is really extra.
Of the 6,000 cases that you produce, there's a significant one that you have in your portfolio, which I feel separates you from a lot of producers, and that's your sparkling rosé, which is Pinot Noir, 100% Pinot Noir?
100%.
We had it at Beaufort Wine and Food. It was featured in my wife's glass right now, but also featured there and everywhere. By the way, for those that can hear the motorcycles flying by, that's a common occurrence here. There's like a lot of great roads to ride if you have a bike. So if you have a motorcycle or you want to be in like the Hells Angels, either one, you can come here. The rosé, the sparkling, the fact that you're doing method de champenoise and like that wine technique is significantly different than all the other wines you do. So a lot of houses choose like, I just do sparkling or I just do still. But you bit off both and you're like, I do all of this. And I would say, I think from the outside looking in, that might be your most recognizable label. I think people go, oh shit, that's that sparkling rosé. Like you guys have really made an impact with that bottling. Is that the beginning of your creation? Did that come later? When did that bottle come into your portfolio?
To play maybe my 10th vintage.
Okay.
I started, maybe
you're 13, so it's 22 years the first one.
Yes. So not that deep into it, but about a dozen vintages in. But I had worked the harvest of 96, so we planted the vineyard. I still had Passport Wine Club, and I worked a harvest in France, both in Burgundy and in the little village of Lemieux, because in Lemieux they started earlier making sparkling wine. So it's called Blanquette de Lemieux, but it's really the methods of Champagne still, but it's unique varieties like Grenache Blanc and Brut Blanc and Claret and these beautiful white varietals, and you make several, and then really the blending is so instrumental. And I really embraced and learned so much working that harvest in the southwest of France that I always wanted to return to sparkling wine, but I only wanted to do it when I could really go all out. And, and I had relationships with small growers in Champagne, and you had
to have been like renting that equipment at the beginning, right? Like the disgorger and like the bottle capper and like all that stuff. Like just production wise, it's a totally different beast. It's like you almost have a brewing line,
right?
Like a brewery line and on top of
we started it. Why not to go all the way to Hopland to get someone who had that equipment? Could so
like a total pain in the ass to decide to start making sparkling wine.
Yeah.
with all the excitement in the world when you figure out, because for us, when I started that was not me saying I want to start making sparkling wine this vintage. It was something I knew I always wanted to do.
Yeah.
And then I was in a vineyard block with the Dutton Ranch.
Amazing vineyards.
Yeah, amazing vineyards. Their father, Steve and Joe, both worked really hard. Great individuals. Their father, Warren Dutton, was a real pioneer in Russian River Valley. He consulted for the apple growers. He was a great farmer. He knew the best properties. So as he was the one that really said, everyone thought it was too cold to even ripen fruit out where we are.
Yeah.
And he said, you know what? So he knew the best little crowns that were, or the best orchards. And he as the 2 apple processing plants closed, he decided to start planting Chardonnay, and he knew exactly where to do it.
Nice.
So anyway, we're there to talk about some pruning in one of the vineyards we were purchasing from them to make still wine Pinot.
Yeah.
And they were talking about possibly grafting over this piece at the bottom because all the cool air, just like warm air rises, the cool air sinks. And this little piece on the tail down next to Atascadero Creek wouldn't even ripen for still wine. It would be on the vine all the way into October. And this is them telling me it's on the vine all the way October. It only makes 19 bricks. And I drive away, and they're meeting with the butter. The only reason they brought it up is that after meeting with me about pruning in our, they were meeting the guy who was going to butt it over Chardonnay. Yeah, we're going to butt it over Chardonnay because it ripens sooner, and it would have been a better thing. And I drive away, and I call them later and say, I would love to. It was I just heard their voices, and it was the perfect description.
Our wines are only making champagne grapes. I don't know what else to do. You're like, let me guess what.
All the way into October.
I don't mean to oversimplify champagne grapes, but
character and still coming in at the chemistry of sparkling wine.
Yeah.
19, 5 bricks under what we're picking for everything else.
And also, just to explain to people that don't know this stuff, is that typically these sparkling wines have high acid, low alcohol, because when the wine is made, it's made completely dry, like crisp dry to the point where it would pucker your mouth so much that you would not want to drink this wine. And then you put in a dosage after the secondary fermentation, right? To like
at the secondary, you have to add.
But it's what makes the secondary fermentation.
And then you put the cap.
Right.
So you need to.
You're putting in a sweet liquor.
What you're doing from the beginning, and you also can't just pick a regular vineyard early to get that chemistry, because then it hasn't been on the vine long enough to build the character of the aroma and flavor. There's 2 ripenings going on.
What's your dosage like? You don't have to give me the exact recipe, but
it's how to speak.
Yeah, it depends. It's different every vintage, because we'll look.
Oh, it's going to fill in to where what it's going to supplement.
Exactly what we want and where. What we need.
It's trade secret there, folks.
Where it is, yeah.
Yeah, you can't give us
got this now.
But at the same time, like people have, there's a lot of people that make sparkling wine, and they're like, well, then your first dosage you adjust to here.
Yeah.
Well, if I'm going to do a 3 or 4 year tirage, and we're going to do 2, it won't be the same number for me. I know, because the bubble gets smaller, and I know how to read effervescence and manage. It's.
In the wine industry, we have a phrase, especially in Sonoma County, where we have a little town, and those winemakers, we say there's many roads to Petaluma.
Yeah.
And if you've ever been to Sonoma County, it's full of many non-gridded roads that all lead you to one place, and they all take way too long. But it's amazing. We're a part of this thing that is, 10, 12,000 years old, and we are all doing something different to get to the same end goal. And, in the case of this sparkling, I think that really it's about listening, and really that's the main theme across most of our wines and most of our winemaking is never ever letting me taste what we've done in the winery. It's about being able to be in the vineyard enough times. I always tell everyone the best fertilizer you can ever put in your vineyard is your winemaker's shadow. Get them out there, get in there, and understand really how it lives, how it breathes, how it needs.
That's why it's made in the field. Yeah,
exactly. And really, we have a 127-year-old old vine vineyard. It doesn't see an ounce of new oak, and it's every single one of our wines, from the sparkling down to the cab sauv, down to dessert wines, from the A to Z of our spectrum, is all about just listening and paying attention to what you need. It's not about any one fast thing. Much like how we run our business is how we make our wines. Nothing great happens in spurts, and over 1,000 small decisions, you can hit the bullseye, and our bullseye isn't the target. Our bullseye is, I'm shooting at that arrow that's in the bullseye. We would cut it in half, So
Yeah.
that's how you get so precise on bubbles like that.
Well, since I have the luxury of having a father-son team of winemakers, which doesn't happen too often, at least on one podcast at one time, it reminds me of an anecdote, and I'm only mentioning this because I want to know if there is a parallel in the way this collaboration of winemakers works. And my parallel is back in the day when I was a wine rep. Those that know a lot about a wine, they know the Perrin family. They make Chateau de Bicoastal. They make the everyday wine you see, La Vieille Ferme, at like the Whole Foods market with the two roosters on it, the two chickens. And they make everything. They made like Miraval with Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie back in the day.
We spill more wine than we make.
Right, they're a massive company. In France, they're a huge name.
Yeah.
So I had César Perrin in my car as a wine rep back in the day, and at the time I think he was 23. But at the time, you were probably 23. So thinking about how much time had passed, and at that time he was telling me, his dad is a legend in the business, and he's like doing all this crazy blending of Bicoastal, which it's a Chateauneuf de Pape, so they're one of the few wineries that still blends all 13 varietals in their one bottle, in their main estate label. And so I asked him, just like, what's the process like? We're just in the car, and he's like, well, we have a lot of brothers, a lot of uncles, a lot of like cousins, a lot of men in the family. Sorry, this is a patriarchy. This is like the way it was at least 12 years ago when we were having the conversation. And he said, all the men in the family do their own blend. And then we sit at a round table and we all taste them. And the winner is the one that effectively is the winemaker for that year. And I go, wow, that's crazy. Like, so how often does it change? He's like, never, not one time. It's always been my dad. And I go, oh, really? He's like, the last time someone else won, it was his dad. And the first time he beat his dad, he took over as winemaker, and that was it. And I said, so you've never beat your dad? He's like, yeah. And he goes, I'm fine. Maybe one day. And that was like his thing. And I just felt it was charming, but it also was like, is that what's going on here? Is that your relationship with the winery?
Not even close. But it's a super cool story.
So what is your relationship like in the creative?
So it's the two of us creating together.
Yeah.
We're both tasting through multiple times, and we're playing with trial blends without ever putting anything together. We're doing trials, joints, light. And I can't even imagine 13 grapes in a blend together, because we make the Cap 5 of all 5 Bordeaux varietals from Rockpile, and blending 5 at a time is a huge challenge, and even
it's
3.
It's an open interpretation, right?
Like different white varietals blended. It's really fun when, and you think about it, like if you remember in high school or whatever, you had the combination lock, and you're in a hurry and you're like, zick, zick, zick. And you do it, and then finally,
more frustrating you get,
stop and relax, and then it just drops open, and we just sit together and we create this together. So we both know near where the starting point of where we're going to go is before we take it serious.
Yeah,
because we've been working on these trials and talking to each other about how each piece is growing and how it's changing and how one is still tight and how these are. Where we're looking at the different varietals and the components, and even within individual barrels within the individual lots. Like when we're down at the end, when we're really dialing it in, we're in quarter barrels and stuff.
Yeah. So you're really dialing it in.
Yeah, because we start sneaking up on it. Most everything we do in red wines is a full 2 years on barrels. So we really get to let them be finished with evolving before we're trying to turn it into stuff. So we're watching this, but it's a moving target all the time. And we're trying to start, getting our heads around it. We still will scrap all that and start fresh, but we do have an idea of where we are. But we also don't make ourselves think this is the answer, because we've thought about that as it moves, because other things catch up in maturity and all that. But then once we're there and we really start to come down the path where we're really making the wine, when we know it's not something we decide, okay, here we're on the final approach here on this wine. We both know it. We're tasting it and we're shifting little pieces, and like, do we need more aromatics here? Do we, the texture as we're chasing this perfect piece, because there's aroma. and flavor. And but
So
the
it's
texture
not-
is so important to us and things, and as we're blending above it, we start out both looking and conversing, but then at a certain point we're one in the making of the final end because we know what each other
You're a band, you're a family. I mean,
and we know what we're doing, and I know what
But so is
he's
there
gonna
less-
think of this before,
Yeah, but are you? From what I'm hearing, you're not striving to emulate a flavor profile of yesteryear, like Veuve Clicquot is always trying to be Veuve Clicquot, right? That's why they do the blending of multiple years, Solera method, whatever, and they're looking to make it taste like the way you had it last time. But you're being more vineyard specific in the sparkling. That is a blend, though. Yes, your sparkling.
it depends.
Sometimes you go vintage.
I mean, you're doing sometimes we'll do 2 different ferments on the base wine.
It's always
It
the
might
same.
be picked 3 times.
You don't. Okay, it is
We do
vintage.
A and B, but it's
Okay.
you might what the thing with Pinot, she's a very classy lady and she loves gently rolling real estate. So as he talked about hot air rising and cold air sinking, that cold air really affects the ripening cycle. And so, every day when we're picking, if we're going into a vineyard and we walk halfway down the slope and there are unripe flavors on that, we'll take out just pink fluorescent agricultural, pruning tape, and we'll run it across, 10 rows and we'll say, this is where it stops. And then that is that vineyard's first pick. We'll come back in a week or two and we'll get perfect ripeness at that. And then on everything that we do, we don't make homogeneous blends on anything. We've been everything separately.
Yeah.
So my cellar spreadsheets are immense and diverse, and to make those 12 to 17 wines per year that we make, there's 40 pieces in those works, and blending that, we sneak up on it over 100 hours. And it's about division of labor. As I'm learning to run the winery, I'm doing it on the opposite coast with my dad here in North Carolina. So I think that so much of it, reverberates through our business where, what we do is never the same thing, because when you're wearing as many hats as we do, there's no wasted effort. You have to learn how to take out 2 tasks in one breath, and you don't get to stop, look around and think. You have to make quick decisions. You have to move forward. You have to understand that every single day you're doing a bunch of small gains to get to one objective, but you got to knock out, as many of it as you can. I just
And
brewed
you kind of
18 acres and 10,000 vines myself with my one right-hand man.
Oh man.
I think I finished about a month ago, a month and a half, right before bud break. And it was a mad dash. So we were going as hard as we could. I don't think any 2 people have tackled a vineyard that big this year. So
Well, the schedule, as you alluded to just now, is also interesting because you are bicoastal with these 2 properties. And Guy, you were telling me that effectively you spend half the year here, half the year there. Is this area a 4-season resort area, or does
No,
it
it's not.
kind of shuts down in the winter?
So it's not half, 2 weeks here, 2 weeks there of each month. It's like right now,
You're here.
I'll be here 3 out of the 4 weeks.
Mhm.
But Cooper and I, as we started last year, that worked so well. We started the blends earlier and getting closer, not blending anything, but doing our trial blends to be closer so that then I can go home for a focused week and we can finalize one set and then set some bottling up. And so I'll be going back, but I'll be managing this site.
Yeah.
3 weeks, go home. Cooper will have us coordinated composite samples pulled for blending within hours of when I get back to town, and we sit down with fresh samples and we do
Super cool,
a
man.
week's worth of work, and then we make decisions, and then those aren't final either, but then I go away and then we come back in the bottling stage that we just set up, and then we work on blending for another half week for the next phase. But then when harvest starts, I'm 100% in California from
It's game
a
on.
week before it's, when Cooper says it's close, then I'm home. Then we start to
The babies do.
prioritize what's
I give him
essentially
7 days every year. I give him 7 days
Yeah.
to come home, get his feet set, get adjusted, and then it's 120 days straight of 12 to 18-hour days, and we're all over the place. It doesn't matter if it's you got to pick this morning at 2 a.m. and you got you got to go look at barrels to buy, and they're 5 hours away. I'm finishing that pick. I'm sorting fruit. I'm putting it in tank. I'm buttoning the tank up, and that's 3 o'clock. I'm packing my bag and I'm driving south at 2 a.m. Got to get as much sleep as I can, and it's adrenalizing, it's exciting. It's this beautiful time where the wine becomes wine. I think the consumer doesn't really know that process is done in such a short window of time. They imagine, we talk a lot about, it's in barrel for so long, and they don't necessarily know that it is wine from, after about a month and a half.
Yeah.
So that's the magic point. And it is just, it's the stuff we live on. It's this magic dance, and past, being in restaurants, it's the exact same way in a cellar when things are moving.
Yeah.
It's a domino effect. Everything has to happen in perfect sync. And to make great wine in the cellar is much like, a great night service, it's
super cool.
Has that timeline, or like when you harvest, have you seen that change over the last 23 years because of the climate shifts?
Some, but not as much as you would think because of our proximity. We've seen it as an industry shifting like crazy.
Like a full month. I was in Spain last fall, and they said harvest was a full month early.
Right. And that would even depend on where in Spain.
Yeah, right.
Because like for us, we have this short-term gift for whatever time it is, but because the way it works in the best wines in the world are made in the coastal areas, whether it's the Mediterranean, whether it's the Pacific, whether it's wherever it is, because the ocean buffers the growing season.
Yeah.
It extends it out to almost twice sometimes, which is meaning as you're waiting for acidity to drop on the curve and the vines to take in sunshine and photosynthesize and make sugar, that's one ripening. The other is all the aroma and flavor that the vines are pushing into the cluster, because their goal is just to have a bird eat that seed and take it and reproduce. On the coastal areas, it's great because you get twice as much time on the vine, because here's what happens during the day. Warm air rises, it gets hot. In Napa, it hits 90 something and the warm air rises. Well, it creates a vacuum, and the gap where the Russian River goes into the Pacific is a funnel where cool air comes in. And so it was 90 in Napa, it was 80 in Sonoma. It's now 40 in Sonoma and 50 in Napa because the warm air rises and the cool air comes off the ocean.
Petaluma Gap, is that what we're talking about?
That's south.
That's further. Okay.
But yeah, there's two main sources of that wind thaw marine effect into Russian River Valley, and it would be predominantly the mouth of the Russian River, which is in kind of, Guerneville, if you're going out Green Valley, those would be the area. And then the Gap.
But any coastal area in the world, and whether you're in Italy on the coast or in France, you're going to do all driven. And so, to be in the right area, always to make the best wine. But the question was global warming, and if you're close enough to the coast, it's actually a little bit cooler right now on a piece of the growing season, because as it gets hotter, it creates that vacuum and you pull in, maybe it starts an hour sooner, or maybe it's just more. So we're not getting like extreme effects of the climate change yet. Like it is, I won't say that we aren't getting any, but it's not as bad yet as it is in other parts of the world, or even, once you go inland very much.
Isn't that the argument for
anomaly? Because I don't.
As a sparkling maker, though, isn't that the argument for like why we can have sparkling wine in Kent, England, because of global warming? That it's a little warmer going north now, and that Champagne is not as cold as it once was, but they're on the same soil, and so you can make similar wine there.
And doing it doesn't take you from not being able to make wine at all to making great wine. But if you were making wine, they might be getting better as this goes if you were battling to get right,
But every farmer in the world's feeling it, right? And it presents itself differently every year. But I think the wine industry is so much more suited to adapting, luckily. And I don't think that's necessarily a good thing. But I think given the vintage paradigm that we've all lived by for so long, with such a year-to-year focus, I think we're a little more inclined for adaptation, but we feel it. I mean, we're lucky because we have the infrastructure that supports us from things like fire and other things that we've had challenges with in the past, but it's definitely present, and it presents itself in different ways, especially when you do, luckily, like my dad said, we have the buffering effect of that fog.
Yeah.
And most of that, we get almost all of our rainfall between about Halloween, November, and the end of April, So our grape growing, that's when the grapevines have no leaves, they're dormant, they're asleep, and then no rain during our grape growing seasons. Why we're able to hold.
Yeah, North Carolinians don't understand that, or Californians don't understand why they moved to North Carolina, that it rains throughout the summer every other day.
We've almost been in it 3 times today. I probably had 10 or 12 drops on the table.
And it does not rain in California in the summer at all. Like, if it does, it's a day, and that's it. It's like, it really just doesn't. And so it's so weird. Speaking of climate, speaking of vintage, we'll get out of here soon. This may be my last question, and maybe there's nothing even here to mine from. But you mentioned specifically the 1996 season when you were first kind of getting into, you're talking about your sparkling and all. I'm curious, where did you spend the fabled 1997 vintage? Were you in Sonoma, Napa area during that year?
Yeah, 97 was the first crush of Davis Family Vineyards. So
speak to that, because
96 was the last year I had worked harvests in Northern Hemisphere, in France.
But to oversimplify, for those that might not know, like 97, many consider, at least in Napa, to be the best vintage it's ever had, possibly. Maybe 02, 03 were also great, but like, I think it's historic, and like, at least generationally, it might have considered to be the best vintage for Cabernet over the last 30, 40 years. And so that's right when you got started. So you're just like, oh, everything's going to be perfect. Everything's going to be great. Is there anything you could talk about with that vintage? And did you know it at the time that things were just feeling right, like it was working the way it was supposed to?
Well, it was a gift for sure. But I've been working harvest since 80. So I'd seen harvest. I'd seen a vintage.
Yeah.
I knew that 97 was great. I already owned a wine.
Yeah.
I'd been selling wines from Cal.
It wasn't new to you, but there wasn't like an anomaly that was happening at the time, though. In the moment.
No, it was a great vintage. And I'd worked in Burgundy 2 harvests and Rhone. So I also knew that, like, California already was blessed with great weather, but it was remarkable. And we had a gift beyond, because the first year we made wine, I made 500 cases. I made 300 cases of Napa Cap and 200 cases of Dutton Ranch Russian River Chardonnay.
Yeah.
And both of those wines were stunning. And the Napa Cap in 97 was picked by multiple people, but it was in the New York Times picked it as one of the top 20 wines of the vintage.
Yeah.
It was our first release, and it was $22 a bottle, wine priced with the Russian River Chard. And in 99, that came.
Wow.
So then we were like,
you went out with a bang, or you kicked off.
Yeah.
it's like,
It went viral in its first year, essentially.
It was
in print. That was a big deal, too.
Yeah.
Like viral in print. I don't know what you.
Yeah, I mean, there was
viral.
No, online,
dad joke.
But the New York Times.
That's amazing.
In the top 20, and we had just set a couple of bottles off as well. Sam.
My like kind of closing question is tying back California to Highlands and kind of like how much you've seen Sonoma change in the last 30 years that you've been there, and also how that's kind of parallel where now you're starting here in Highlands, and how you even see Highlands or North Carolina changing in its like wine journey, culinary journey.
Great question. Honestly, great question.
Did I blow your mind?
I don't want you to go into another interview.
I know. It's a loaded question.
It's a good question.
30 seconds.
Yeah, the evolution is so different because they've been on different things where you've been farming organic since 05 or 95 and watching other practice, trying to demand that growers who we buy from not use Roundup, not do certain things. But from a business standpoint there in California, we've seen a flood of new wineries and competition and pricing and things changed that were not always the most positive for a small winery. But watching it in North Carolina from the west to the east, there's an awareness of food and wine and the sourcing of great, chefs here now have incredible, you saw it today at Native Prime with the resources that are available to chefs in North Carolina and consumers in North Carolina, and the knowledge of wines around the world. And we've seen this grand appreciation come about in this state that's so
perfectly timed when it comes to appreciation. Let me just go over here. You were reading our minds as we're closing up the episode. What are we drinking?
This is the Cuvée Luc. And I'll let Guy and Cooper talk about this wine. They're the winemakers. So,
yeah, we mentioned it earlier. This
is one of those namesake wines for us. This was the first, that we ever made, named after my nephew Luke, the first grandson of our family. And, through so many vintages over a decade, 15 years of making this wine, it has superseded its blend proportion, through all of the environmental characteristics that go on every vintage. This hasn't always been able to be one set recipe. So as winemakers, we have to sit down and step back and ask ourselves this kind of philosophical question about who this person is. What does it embody? How do we take the ingredients into a personality as opposed to just a proportion, right? And so I think this, the boys, we have two namesake wines in our lineup right now that are the Cuvée Luc, which is my nephew, and then the Sage, which is my son. But it's about being playful, right? It's about being playful, but these young gentlemen are so wise beyond their years. So we wanted something that if you were to put this down and, let it go, that it would be, to share that same wisdom. So the Sage does that really well. This is just such a beautiful blend of all these Rhone varietals. So Roussanne, Marsanne, Viognier, and Picpoul, all in stainless steel. So super lean, pretty. But as wine drinkers, we see so much of kind of the big white varietals, your Chards, your Sauv Blancs. And for somebody that wants something a little bit different, something that's clean, aromatically and acid driven, this is perfect. It's Asian pears, white peach.
This is totally my style.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. The Picpoul means lip stinger, so it has that really beautiful. It's got that really, really beautiful acid character that both brings a tart finish, but also this elegant closure to the fruit. That's the best part.
Mouth watering mouth watering acidity that as you finish, you're like
you want more
something creamy and rich.
But it makes you want to eat too, though. It makes you hungry, which it doesn't stop, right?
I'm gonna reach over for the wine.
Yeah, but when the pairing is right, when by the time you're only a bite or two in, you're already asking for your second glass. And it's not because you have a drinking problem. It's, there's part of that. But when it flows so perfectly, when you're just this cheese and this wine were married like they should be together, you just start drinking it and you're like, oh yeah, and then it's just the glass is gone, and it's just because of that perfect synergy. And that's the best part. That's when you're doing it right. And you guys killed it. Thank you for the invite to come out to Highlands, North Carolina on Memorial Day weekend. It was kismet, as we mentioned earlier, for us to come out. Thanks. And you're normally not here, so that was also a cool thing. You were in town.
Yep. I'm usually while he's over here, which during season can be we say 3 weeks a month, but he's over here full time. He's the GM. So I'm at sometimes on a long pull. We'll probably do a big one before bottling, so he'll be out here for a couple months. And while he's over there, I'm running the show over there. So much like he's got an amazing team over there, I've got an amazing team back in California, and they're working on a checklist that we made sure was extra long.
I didn't even ask.
That's the name of the game for us. Really, we are all about putting our best foot forward so that we can support this, because we make wine for our tasting room, for storytelling. And right now, we do by appointment in Santa Rosa, but this is the tasting room for Dave's family at Vineyards. This is where it's at. And we make wines for Highlands. We've bought property in Highlands. We collect sales tax for Highlands. We do philanthropy in North Carolina.
You've got a back tattoo of the North Carolina
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
He's
It's a
all in.
sports team, but I won't tell you who because I like my customers. No, but,
He's all in, folks.
Yeah, we're all about it, and anywhere that has a voice that's telling the story of makers, I think that really great makers will find home. If you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
And so we're just grateful to be here. It's we've in hospitality, hosting is the name of the game, and for 20 years we've been guests here, and so we're welcome guests, but now we get to be proud hosts. We get to put our feet in the ground and do what we do best, bring people together with a good wine. So it's pretty cool.
Nice. Well, as Matt would say, and he is now back. He's officially landed back from Italy, and he's back in North Carolina. This is my podcast partner. He would tell you, for those that are interested in getting amazing wine, both in Sonoma or in Highland, North Carolina, or around North Carolina in general, you can check out Davis Family Vineyards, and you will eat and drink merrily.
That's it. Thank you so much. Davis Family Vineyards.com.
Oh, yeah.
Good.
Thank you for listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. By rating us online, you're helping others to discover our show. Follow us on all platforms at NCFB Pod.